Looks like we have Republicans in disarray. So in the immediate aftermath of what we just saw, I believe it was 2 days ago at the National Association of Black Journalists, where Donald Trump tried out his newest strategy of attacking Kamala Harris on, surprise, surprise, her race, there has been there was obviously a major backlash among the left, because of course there's going to be a major backlash among the left when you have a lifelong racist misogynist who comes out and denies the very ethnicity of the person that he's running against, who just so happens to be the first major nominee for the president who is a black female. But there has been a major backlash, surprisingly, from those within his own party. And I think it's a testament to the fact that finally, for one of the only times in recent memory, we're actually seeing some discerning responses among Republicans who are recognizing that what Donald Trump is trying to do by virtue of pivoting to this just outright racist attack against Kamala Harris just ain't it. And for the first time, even among a community of people for whom, their ability to just kowtow to the God King and display nothing but slavish fealty to him, even those people have begun speaking out. And when you have dissent in the ranks among a political party that tolerates zero dissent, that's pretty telling. So I want to go over a few instances of some top allies of Donald Trump who have begun to express some serious concern, who've begun to jump ship unto themselves, and this comes in the immediate aftermath of Donald Trump's comments about Kamala Harris's race. So the first one that I want to show you is Tomi Lahren, who, if you've watched this channel, you know that I've had quite a bit of experience debating her in the past. Here's what she had to say in the aftermath of Donald Trump's comments about Kamala Harris on stage at the National Association of Black Journalists.
But the biggest thing that the Trump campaign can do is stop talking about what her race is. Stop talking about if she's Indian or black. Nobody cares if she's Indian, black, or a space Martian.
That was Tomi Lahren making it abundantly clear on Fox News, no less, that this is a losing strategy. So you've got Tomi Lahren. Then let's move over to Ben Shapiro. You've got Ben Shapiro, who posted a meme that shows a car that could have been going straight, but then where you just continue to attack Kamala's record, lies, and radicalism. That's what he's saying. But then veering off instead and taking the off-ramp to, is she really black? And Ben followed that up with another tweet that says, I don't know, guys. I just think that maybe winning the 2024 election might be more important than having this silly and meaningless conversation. I would offer, Ben, have you met Donald Trump? This is the guy who traffics in so much abject nonsense, whether it's about windmills or imaginary cannibals like Hannibal Lecter, about Jeb Bush getting us involved in the war in the Middle East, water pressure in toilets and showers. I mean, the notion that all of a sudden we're engaging in territory that has to do with meaningless and silly conversations is a little bit ignorant of where we've been for the last 8 years under Donald Trump. But there are more. Now we move over to Rick Santorum, who I should note ended his Senate career because he was so blatantly, egregiously homophobic that he couldn't even remain a member in good standing in the Republican Party in the U.S. Senate, a Senate that, by the way, now includes people like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, and Rick Santorum was too much. And yet, here's what he had to say about message discipline when it came to Trump.
Trump has a bevy of riches to go after Kamala Harris. The question is he disciplined enough to stick to those topics and do it? Now, if you look at what happened today in Chicago, he wasn't. He got, and I understand they were punching at him and they were baiting him, but that's what every reporter is going to do to Donald Trump to get him off his message. The most important thing is for him to stay on message in front of folks who are not rally goers, but people who are listening to interviews who may not know the Kamala Harris story, and they didn't get that story from Donald Trump today.
Again, there is nothing that I appreciate more than one of the most raging homophobic members of the Republican Party who literally couldn't even keep his seat in the U.S. Senate because he was just too bigoted, lecturing Donald Trump on his message discipline when that guy is giving lessons to Donald Trump about how to stay on message and how not to alienate people, that is when you have lost the plot. Then we have Bill O'Reilly. Somehow it continues to get worse. The stream of people from Tomi Lahren to Ben Shapiro to Rick Santorum to now Bill O'Reilly, losing Bill O'Reilly. Here's what he had to say.
Donald Trump blew it, and the happiest person in the country tonight is Kamala Harris. Because she's sitting there cackling, look at this, look at this, look at Trump. He's just alienated millions of black voters who aren't going to really get what happened there. The broadside against Kamala Harris was that she's a phony, that she used one bit of ethnicity to do this, one bit to do that. But Trump didn't articulate it.
There's Bill O'Reilly pointing out the fact, and this is, I think, actually, for as deplorable as Bill O'Reilly may be, this is actually a good point because Donald Trump has one job right now. He already has his base. He has those people. He's doubled down, tripled, quadrupled down on the MAGA base. We already know he's got them. He even chose J.D. Vance solely because he was only focused on his base. That is a base-only strategy. When you choose someone like J.D. Vance, who is not a moderate, not from a swing state, not a different race or religion or ethnicity. He is just a carbon copy of Donald Trump himself. When you choose someone like that, that is a testament to the fact that you're just doubling down on your own base. The fact is that if Donald Trump wants to win this election, if any candidate wants to win this election, you have to figure out how to expand your base. The only inroads that Donald Trump had been trying to make is with two demographic groups. That's young people and people of color. And there is something that young people and people of color absolutely recognize right now, and that is the very concept of biraciality. And so you have someone like Kamala Harris, who is the child of an Indian American and a Jamaican American. So she's half black, half Indian. Young people who are inherently the most diverse generation that we've had in this country very easily recognize the concept of what a biracial person is, and clearly people of color understand the concept of what a biracial person is as well. And so him doing that, getting on the stage, is not only not helping him make inroads with the two demographic groups that he needs the most, it is actually pushing those groups away, whether it's just this bad faith attack by pretending that he doesn't know what Kamala Harris is and therefore making him look completely out of touch to these people, or just levying an attack on a black woman for her race. It's as simple as that. Like, you don't even have to get into the intricacies of it. Clearly what Trump is trying to do in his, some mangled interpretation here is that he's trying to distance Kamala Harris from those very groups by saying, look, she's not black. Like, she can't relate to you. Like, I can relate to you somehow better. Like, the rich old billionaire white guy is going to somehow relate better than Kamala Harris. But that's the point he's trying to make. He's saying she doesn't have as much in common with you as she likes to let on. But the way, which first of all, she is black, and so there is no there there. The argument is completely baseless unto itself. But all it looks like is just some really out of touch old white guy trying to just attack a black woman for being black. And so that's not going to land in the slightest. We then have Karl Rove. Like, it just keeps going. So here's what Karl Rove had to say in the aftermath. And this isn't directly related to Trump's comments, but just more broadly on the state of the race right now. And again, it's worth noting that, Tommy made these comments on Fox News. Rick Santorum made his comments on Newsmax. Bill O'Reilly made the comments on News Nation. So all of these networks aren't exactly liberal bastions between Fox, Newsmax, and News Nation. Then here's what Karl Rove had to say on Fox.
The national number, though, and you get a sense of this. Remember, before the first debate with Biden and Trump, Trump was leading by close to 3 points or above 3 points, depending on when you looked at it. Trump today in the Real Clear Politics average is leading by 1.2%, 1.2 points. There's an outlier in there, the poll that gives him a 5-point lead. Without that outlier, he's leading by less than 1%, 0.8. In fact, if you look at it, there were 5 polls in the Real Clear Politics average that occurred before the 25th of July. Trump leads in all 5 of those. Of the 5 polls that have been held since the 26th of July, he leads in only 2. She leads in 3. So I fully expect that the momentum she has is going to carry her through, unless it's a disastrous vice presidential choice. This momentum is going to leave her in the lead at the end of the Democratic convention.
So what he's saying there is especially important. So of the last, I believe he was talking about the last 10 polls, for example. Of the last 10 polls, the first 5, which happened before July 25th, Donald Trump was leading in all of them. And the second group of 5, Kamala Harris was leading in the majority of them, which shows one thing very clearly, is that the momentum is heading in one direction, and that is toward Kamala Harris. I even want to point you to a poll that we saw today. This is a highly rated pollster. This is the guy who had formerly started Rasmussen polls, and then he left that polling outfit about a decade ago. This poll in the last go-round for RMG polling had Donald Trump up 2. Now it's got Kamala Harris up 5. And my caveat here for this polling is that, look, there, the usual caveats apply. You can't take this, you can't necessarily take every poll as sacrosanct. It is also just a snapshot of a moment in time, and not necessarily a predictor of the future. And who knows what the margin of error could be, or whether the sample was weighted one way or the other in terms of too many Democrats, too many Republicans. So those are all the caveats. But the point here is that in a poll that in just the last iteration showed Donald Trump up 2, and now Kamala Harris up 5, even if those numbers aren't exactly correct, the fact that we're seeing a 7-point swing from Republicans to Democrats over the course of one iteration of this poll is a clear testament to the fact that the polls are very clearly moving in Kamala Harris's direction, that the momentum is very clearly moving in her favor. And so I think that, when you have Karl Rove even showing up on TV and saying that is a testament to the state of the race as it stands right now, and the reality that Donald Trump is losing ground, which is why, and this is all feeds into itself, right? Because that is exactly why you have Donald Trump up there on stage doing whatever he can to try and claw back some attention. Think about who Trump was when he got all of the attention ahead of the 2016 election. Say something shocking, get eyeballs on you, consolidate, all of the news coverage to revolve around you, win the election. That's the strategy, right? And so he's reverting right back to that. The problem is, it's just bad attention and people are tired. The whole shtick is completely tired. But he's trying the exact same thing he tried the first go round. And when he gets desperate, when he wants to win and he realizes that there's no other avenue to do that, and of course he's not going to stick with this disciplined new tone bullshit that Chris LaCivita was putting forward, then all that's going to happen now is he's going to say outlandish things. The problem is that those outlandish things aren't going to consolidate attention for him in the way that he wants to, in the oh, look at this new shiny thing in 2016 way. All it's going to do is push the very people that Donald Trump needs to get for his campaign away. Attacking Kamala Harris on race when your only inroad possibility in your campaign is to reach out to young people and people of color, ain't it? And I know for those watching, some people are going to be like, don't give him advice. Let him just keep shooting himself in the foot. Look, if Donald Trump isn't listening to the people around him, if he has no discipline when it comes to listening to his own campaign staff and his own advisors and his own staffers and his own pollsters, I can assure you, he is not listening to me on YouTube when I criticize him for the fact that he doesn't know what he's doing, and this is a surefire way to lose the election. So I really wouldn't worry about that. But that is the state of the race right now. As of as of just days ago, we have a number of right-wing influencers, a number of right-wing media figures who have just come out and with about 3 months to go in this election have basically said, like, this is a surefire way to throw this thing away. Again, I'll point you to Ben Shapiro's comment. I don't know, guys. I just think that maybe winning the 2024 election might be more important than having this silly and meaningless conversation as it relates to this new attack line against Kamala Harris, where he attacks her for being black. So that's where it stands as of right now, in terms of Trump's strategy and how it seems to be panning out. But as far as I can see, when it comes to those around him, the people who would usually be breathlessly advocating for him, they seem to be less than enthused about Donald Trump and the tactics that he's taking as we head into this final 90-day stretch. So what I'll do right now is I'm going to answer some questions, and that's kind of the point of these live streams, to give you the opportunity to talk about different things, because I don't put a ton of content out each day, but this kind of gives us an opportunity to touch on different things. So as you write some comments in the chat, just one note real quick. If you want to participate in the chat, please make sure to subscribe. That is just in general a great way to support what I do. My channel is just over 10,000 away from 3 million. So if you're watching this right now and you want to support my work, you want to support these live streams, you want to support my content more broadly, or you just want to help me reach this meaningless milestone of 3 million subscribers, this is a great way to do it, because there is a possibility we can reach it tonight, depending on how many people are in here and how many people may be able to subscribe. Again, we're just over 10,000 away from 3 million on this channel, and that is the result of me spending the better part of 80% of my life staring at YouTube. So help me out, hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, and this will also give you the opportunity to throw some questions in the chat. Okay, first question I'm getting is the one that I thought I would get, and that is the VP race as it stands right now. So I think what we'll do is let's do a quick poll, and I'm going to see who we think is most likely to be picked as Kamala's VP. So I'm going to do Buttigieg, I'm going to do Waltz, I'm going to do Shapiro, and I'm going to do, let's say, Bashir. Okay, those are our 4 choices right now. So if you are watching this live, you can go ahead and subscribe. I'm sorry, if you're watching this live, you will be able to vote in the poll. If you're not watching this live, you'll be able to see the polling, but you won't be able to participate in the actual poll. Okay, here's another question I'm getting. Will or should Kamala start bringing up Donald Trump's September sentencing? I don't know that she necessarily needs to talk about his sentencing, because I think that would play into Donald Trump's whole victimhood shtick and weaponization of the FBI bullshit that he spews on a daily basis. But I think she absolutely should talk about the fact that he has committed crimes. I think when you get into the process of actually sentencing, that's something that they should go completely hands off. But when it comes to him being a criminal, she is a prosecutor. No one is better situated by virtue of, their entire life's worth of work to be able to prosecute this case, no pun intended, against Donald Trump. So I think absolutely that is all fair game. I would just avoid sentencing because that gets into some gray area where she's actually talking about what should happen, and it can be perceived as influencing a judge or something like that. Of course it's not, but I think you should just stay away from that part and just focus on the fact that he did commit crimes that is ripe enough unto itself in terms of what can be exploited against him. For those who asked where Mark Kelly is in the poll, I can only include 4. So I just decided to throw those in right now. But that doesn't mean that I don't think Mark Kelly is just as viable as a candidate as the other ones. So I'm seeing this question, so many people love Pete, but they're concerned. So I want to address this for a second, because I've been thinking about this a lot. It's also worth noting that Pete has basically won every poll on this channel for the last 10 days that I've done these polls. But there is concern among people who are watching that, like, oh, is America ready to, to vote for a gay guy? And I think my thoughts on this are this. America isn't ready to vote for someone until they have the opportunity to do it. I think that had you asked most of us before Barack Obama was elected in 2008, is America ready to elect a black man? I think the vast majority of people would have said no. I would venture to guess that 85% of people would have said no. And then we have Barack Obama, who comes onto the scene, wins Indiana and Iowa and North Carolina, wins a second term for president, and he's probably the most the most popular figure in the entire Democratic Party. If that guy ran for president, he would win 10 times out of 10, right? And so I think that as it relates to Pete, look, there is nobody more qualified to be in any position in government than Pete Buttigieg. He has shown that over and over and over again. And so I think I get that people are afraid, but I think the only way that we get over this idea that someone is too whatever to be nominated for any position is just to have somebody who is beyond qualified, like Pete is, and give us the opportunity to actually do it. There's a huge disconnect in my brain between this idea that people wouldn't vote for Pete because he's gay, with the fact that every time I see him out there in front of a Fox News audience, in front of the Daily Show audience, in front of a live audience at a rally, wherever he is, he gets this massive, massive ovation. Everyone loves him. And I've yet to see people who don't love him or who don't recognize what a force he is or who don't recognize the work that he's doing. And so I think if we just give people the opportunity to actually vote for someone like that, instead of just worrying about whether certain attributes precede him, then we can get over this idea that, oh, we're not ready for somebody who's gay, we're not ready for somebody who's black, we're not ready for somebody who's female. I think give us the opportunity to do it and show that in fact we are ready, instead of pontificating about it without actually having the opportunity to do it. So that's just my thoughts on the matter. Obviously, I'm just as worried as everybody else about the electability of any candidate we put forward. But I think what we're seeing now is, look, Kamala Harris is a black woman. I think a few years ago you would have asked somebody, do you think we can elect a black woman in this country? I don't know how many people would have said yes, but we have the opportunity to. And look what the polling is showing right now. She's surging ahead of Donald Trump in state after state. So maybe we're at the point where it's not so much about these surface level factors as it is about the person themselves. And so that's what I hope with the Pete of it all. That's those are my thoughts on the Pete of it all. And look, I'm looking at the poll happening right now. Buttigieg is at 38, and Bashir, who on paper in this country you would think is more electable. This is a white guy who, a young white guy, Christian, who appeals to conservative Democrats, who can win in a place like Kentucky. That's the kind of person who on paper Democrats would think, oh, we got to get somebody like that. But I'm giving people in this chat the opportunity to vote right now, and almost 5,000 people have voted in this poll as it stands right now, and Pete Buttigieg has 5 times the amount of votes as Andy Bashir. So again, we're worried about this idea that Pete Buttigieg may or may not be electable because of his sexual orientation, when at the same time you have so many people, the vast majority of people in this room right here who are watching, who are voting for Pete, showing therefore that he is, if people just come out and vote for him. And of course, look, this is obviously a skewed sample because this is largely Democratic, but I think, the fact is that he's able to energize audiences unlike a lot of people in politics today. By the way, if you are throwing a question over to me, make sure to tag my name so I can easily see it, because there is a lot of activity happening in the chat. Can I speak to the long-term implications if Pete were chosen as VP? Wouldn't that put him in the background? Look, I think the VP position can be made into whatever position we want it to be made into. I would point to 2 people if you're worried about Pete being kind of relegated out of sight. Barack Obama's VP was Joe Biden. Joe Biden is now the president of the United States. Joe Biden's VP is Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is now the presumptive nominee for president of the United States. So I think in terms of, them disappearing, I get it. Look, the top of the ticket is the top of the ticket. It's always going to be, the administration of the executive, of the president. But at the same time, it's not like these people disappear into obscurity. When Biden was Obama's VP, he was setting the stage for him to become the next president of the United States. And with Kamala as Biden's VP, now the stage is set for her to become the next president of the United States. So I don't think we have to worry about them fading away by virtue of getting the job as VP. When historically the next person in line on that ticket will become the next nominee for that party in the subsequent election. I mean, Al Gore was the nominee after, from his ticket. There's a ton of examples here throughout history. Right. I got the comment, it's like same-sex marriage, make it legal and people are ready. I think it's exactly that. Look, you don't know what the country is ready for until you give the country the opportunity to have it. And, remember, it was a Democrat who signed the Defense of Marriage Act against same-sex marriage. But when this country had the opportunity to legalize same-sex marriage, it was overwhelmingly embraced. And now it's embraced by the vast majority of this country. 80-90% of Americans actually support same-sex marriage. And so I think, again, when you give people the opportunity to show that they are willing to be more accepting, willing to be more open, and certainly less bigoted than in the past, or than Republicans would make you believe this entire country is, then this country can actually surprise you. Do I think Trump is trying to lose after what happened to him? No, not at all. I think he recognizes that this election is existential for him. If he wants to stay out of prison, his only hope is to make sure that he wins this election so that he can use his own Department of Justice to withdraw its cases in D.C. and in Florida, and use the presidency, use some perverted interpretation of the supremacy clause to make his RICO prosecution in Georgia go away, and probably make it so that he doesn't have to serve any time if he's sentenced in New York. So this is existential for him. I think he's literally running for his life here so that he doesn't die in prison. So no, I don't think he's trying to lose. I think he's just such a fucking moron that he can't help but do stuff that is probably going to lead him toward losing. But no, I don't think he's trying to lose in the slightest. When can we expect Kamala to announce her VP? I would anticipate that it may happen this weekend, if I had to guess, or at the very latest, if it's not this weekend, Monday, maybe Tuesday. But I would probably expect something this weekend or Monday. Because remember, there is the virtual convention that's happening on the 7th of August, and she already has to have chosen a VP by then. If I was selected as a member of Kamala's administration, what position would I like to take over? I wouldn't want to work in government. I think that that progressive independent media is so important. But so that I don't avoid your question, if I did any position in government, it would be press secretary. That's all I would want to do. But I don't want to do it. I am perfectly content where I'm at. How butthurt do you think Trump was watching the prisoner exchange last night, especially bringing Paul Whelan home? I think absolutely. Donald Trump issued a statement in the aftermath of the prisoner exchange where he just complained. Let me see if I can actually pull that up. Let's see, Trump, Evan. If we can pull up that statement that Trump released. Let's see. Do we have that? So when are they going to release the details of the prisoner swap with Russia? How many people do we get versus them? Also, are we paying cash? Are they giving us cash? Please withdraw that question because I'm sure the answer is no. Are we releasing murderers, killers, or thugs? Just curious because we never make good deals at anything, but especially hostage swaps. Our negotiators are always an embarrassment to us. I got back many hostages and gave the opposing country nothing and never any cash. And he goes on and on. First of all, I think one of the last deals that he made was releasing like 5,000 members of the Taliban in exchange for Americans. So this idea that he never gave anything is an absolute joke. Donald Trump is butthurt because he recognizes that him going out there and saying the only way that we can get Evan back is if I negotiate a deal with Vladimir Putin. And so the fact that Joe Biden was able to do it, it takes one of Donald Trump's tools away that he was hoping to rely on to get people to like extort people into voting for him in November. And now he doesn't have that. It's the same thing he did with the border, by the way. He recognized that fixing the border would be terrible for him because it would take away a potent campaign issue. And so he issued his little clarion call to the Republicans in the House and the Senate and made sure that they voted against a bill that conservative Republican James Lankford negotiated, which basically gave the Republicans everything they were looking for. It was all border security. There was zero comprehensive immigration reform, which is what Democrats usually require to even engage in these negotiations. There was no comprehensive immigration reform. It was solely border security, and yet still the Republicans didn't want anything to do with it because Donald Trump told them no, because he wanted to be able to go out on a daily basis and complain about the border. What he didn't anticipate was A, that people would hit him on this exact issue over and over again because he did it in public, in broad daylight, and we all know about it. And even Republicans came out, like Mitt Romney, and said, like, look, the only reason that we don't have this border deal is because Donald Trump said no. So that's the first thing. And the second is that right now we have fewer apprehensions at the border than even the month that Donald Trump left office. We had the lowest number of apprehensions at the border that we've had during the entirety of Biden's presidency at exactly the time when Donald Trump wants to be able to exploit this issue for his own partisan benefit. So again, both of those things together are not really helping him in the slightest. But yes, of course, he's stewing over the fact that Vladimir Putin, his buddy, who he's been groveling at the feet of, whose colon he's lived inside of for God knows how many years, for that guy to actually negotiate with Joe Biden is more than certainly making Donald Trump lose his absolute skull. And this message right here, where he just melts down basically with his own statement, is a testament to exactly that. For those who are just joining, if you want to participate in the chat and ask me some questions, please make sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can write in the chat subscribers only. It's also just a great way to support what I do. So if you are not yet subscribed to this channel and you want to support my work, it doesn't cost you anything. And it's also, a great way to help me reach 3 million subscribers, which we are very close to. Also, one quick note, and this is the only time I'll mention this in this chat, but I have a book coming out in less than 2 weeks, and it's available for pre-order right now, and it's called Shameless, and the foreword is written by Jamie Raskin. The book is basically about how Republicans use their historic branding, pro-family values, pro-states' rights, pro-constitution, pro-law enforcement, pro-fiscal responsibility, to give themselves cover to act in a way that is completely in conflict with all of those purported values, and how the media has helped them by basically, getting enmeshed in this both sides media, both sidesism bullshit, and finally what Democrats can do to kind of rebalance the political landscape. So very proud of this book. Again, the foreword is written by Jamie Raskin. I interviewed Pete Buttigieg for the book, Mark Elias, Al Franken, Jamie Raskin as well, Heather Cox Richardson. So I will post that right here in the comments, and I'll pin this. If you'd like to pre-order it, that is a great way to support what I do, and I'm very proud of the way that the book turned out, so I think you'll very much enjoy it. Okay, back to the questions here. If Kamala wins as the current VP, will she preside over the vote count in Congress? Yes. So because of the newly instituted Electoral Count Act, that just solidified the fact that the vice president's role in the Senate, the vice president is the president of the Senate, the vice president's role is strictly ceremonial. So a VP would still have to preside over a win or a loss. It doesn't matter who they are, it doesn't matter who's on the ticket, their job is strictly ceremonial. So yes, she would still preside over the vote count in Congress, even if she is the winning nominee. It wouldn't matter. She should have no say one way or the other. It is a perfunctory role that she would be sitting in, and that was validated even further by this bipartisan iteration of the Electoral Count Act. Am I concerned about elections being certified? Of course I'm concerned about elections being certified. I actually did a couple of videos one with Mark Elias about exactly this point, and another with the author of that Rolling Stone article. I'm sure that you've all seen the Rachel Maddow piece where she spoke about the fact that election officials are in place right now who are election deniers, who've espoused election denialism on Facebook, for example, and who are in positions where they themselves can refuse to certify. And the rules about how to adjudicate this issue are kind of ambiguous. And so, of course, it's worrisome. I interviewed the author of that Rolling Stone piece who wrote about that. That formed the basis for Rachel Maddow's segment. And so if you want to check that out, just go onto my YouTube channel, go to the interviews playlist, and then you can watch. I believe it's one of the most recent ones. His name is Justin Glaw. And I've also spoken to Mark Elias about that as well. So just check the titles on both of them, and you'll see that there's 2 videos about election denialism. Mark gives a much better rundown than anybody else, but it's something that we're going to be vigilant of in terms of legal recourse for what happens if these election officials do indeed refuse to certify. They're going to be sued, just like they were sued in 2020, and some of them have legal exposure. A lot of these fake electors have been indicted, so hopefully that's going to discourage a lot of these people from doing that again. But in the instances where they don't care, or they're just so high on their own supply, or they're some of those people who just ascribe to this theory that the only way that Kamala Harris could win is if there's fraud in the election, they're going to be sued and they're going to face litigation. And in that last election, there were 65 lawsuits, and Democrats won 64 of them, with the Republicans only winning one lawsuit that changed the cure deadline in Pennsylvania from 9 to 6 days. So otherwise, there were no judges who actually went along with this insanity, and I don't presume that there will be any this time because their arguments will continue to be baseless. But it's obviously something we should be vigilant of, and knowing the kind of Supreme Court we have, that's something we should be vigilant of as well. But we've got people like Mark Elias, we've got other lawyers, we've got the DNC, we've got Democratic officials who are prepared for this because they know it's happening. And our job on our end is to not even allow it to get to the point where it's close enough that there could be any ambiguity. That is why we need to win. I do my series with Glenn Kirshner. He says we have to win in numbers too big to rig and too real to steal. That's his saying there. But that's the truth. I mean, we need to deliver such a repudiation at the ballot box that when these numbers come in, it's not like, oh, well, there's only a 200 vote difference in the state of Wisconsin. It has to be so clear and convincing, and it's a sad testament to the state of things in this country that it has to be that big, but it has to be that big. And we have to make sure enough people come out to leave no ambiguity and leave no room for error in terms of what the Republicans will try to do by trying to cast out certain ballots or from certain jurisdictions or from certain polling places, because God knows they will try. So we just have to be vigilant. We are being vigilant. We know it's going to happen. It's being broadcast in broad daylight right now, and I think that the people who are in charge of these elections are well aware that it's going to happen. Let's do this right now. So we will take, let's go down to a final 2. Buttigieg and Shapiro are the faraway winners of this poll. So let's just go right down to those 2. Our final poll for the live viewers right now, so I apologize to people who are coming and watching in the aftermath, but the final poll is going to be, who do you want to see between Buttigieg and Shapiro? So we're going to start that poll right now. If you're watching, please make sure to go ahead and vote. And I will try to get back to some of these questions. Do I worry about keeping the momentum until November? What do we do to keep it up? I think we just keep doing what we're doing right now. I mean, there's a lot of calls for Kamala Harris, for example. I think the newest one, there was a white dudes for Kamala call. There's going to be a progressives for Kamala. There's going to be a Republicans for Kamala. Keep participating in these calls. Keep sharing content. Keep showing who Donald Trump is. I know that this is weird coming from somebody, for example, who, let's go just to me. I know that it's weird coming from someone who, for so long was like, I'm sick of seeing Donald Trump. I think it's very important now to broadcast who Donald Trump is and what he's saying so that we can put on full display the insanity of this guy. So keep showing people what it was like when he was in office. Keep showing people the chaos of a Trump presidency. Keep reminding people of how absurd it was. Keep showing people the ridiculous things that he says. When he goes up on stage, there's a reason that I'm live streaming these events, like when he speaks at the National Association of Black Journalists. It's because I need to make sure that we remind people on a daily basis who Trump is, so we don't have this weird revisionist history version of Donald Trump where everything was great and calm and prosperous when he was in office, because it wasn't. And the reality is that Donald Trump left office with a net loss of 3 million jobs, an economic contraction of 3.4%, 6.3% unemployment rate, and 500,000 people having died of COVID because we oversaw the worst COVID response in the entire world, where despite having 5% of the world's population, we had 20% of the world's cases and deaths. That is a direct testament to the fact that we had awful leadership in this country, and it was across the board. And now it's going to be even worse if Donald Trump gets in, so remind people of that. Remind people what Project 2025 is going to be like. Remind people what it'll look like when we no longer have a professional civil service and instead just have an entire civil service that's composed of political appointees. And think about what the DOJ would look like if there's no more professionals, but rather just partisan hacks like Kash Patel and George Papadopoulos and Stephen Miller and just other Trump MAGA acolytes. Think about what the FEC would look like. Think about what, for example, how they could weaponize the FCC to punish liberal stations, for example, for espousing some anti-Trump view, and how that can chill free speech in this country. Think about how they can weaponize the IRS and start auditing liberals, for example, who espouse anti-Trump sentiment in public. That's what will happen to this country. And so our job is to keep making sure that people know about that on a daily basis, keep advocating for Kamala Harris, and hopefully celebrities do their part too. People who have the opportunity, like Taylor Swift, to reach people who otherwise wouldn't be able to be reached, like young people, people who are apolitical, people who don't pay attention to politics, or for whom politics isn't part of their algorithms, for example. So hopefully we see more of that. Megan Thee Stallion came out at Lollapalooza and advocated for Kamala Harris on stage. That wasn't happening when Joe Biden was the nominee. So my hope is that we have more people like that who are going to come forward. So a lot of people are asking why Mark Kelly isn't on the poll. I just tried something a little bit different today. My initial poll had, I can only put 4 names on the polls. My initial poll had Buttigieg, Shapiro, Bashir, and Walz. And Buttigieg and Shapiro were the top earners. So I just tried something different today. But look, these polls are not, they're not sacrosanct. They're just our way to kind of get a little bit of a gauge of where people are or where people are at any moment in time. Okay, let's try to go back to some questions now. I'll take a few more questions here. If you want to throw your questions in the chat, please make sure to tag my name so I can see them. How many more viewers do you think the DNC will have versus the RNC? I think quite a bit more. Look, I can even just give an indication from my own viewership. The viewership in the last week, I've been on YouTube since probably 2018. Most of that has been every single day of my life. I've probably, the days off from YouTube since the beginning of 2019, maybe 30 in the last 6 years, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but in the last 6 years, far and away, my highest viewership has been this week. I've never seen anything like that. That is a direct result of Kamala Harris entering this race and the massive amount of enthusiasm that we've seen since her entrance into this race. So I do think that the numbers of the DNC will far, far exceed the hellfest that was the RNC, and listening to Donald Trump go on some 90-minute rambling stream of consciousness diatribe where some errant synapse fires in his brain and some incomprehensible string of words falls out of his face, where he spends 25 minutes filleting himself over the fact that he nearly got assassinated, and then spends another 25 minutes just acknowledging people in the room, and then goes on the usual rant about Hannibal Lecter and, windmills and water pressure and toilets. I mean, dear God, the fact that anybody could sit through that. I mean, I had to because I was live streaming it, but the fact that anybody would voluntarily sit through that is it just kind of blows my mind. And I think that the enthusiasm that we're seeing now, even just for regular rallies that Kamala is hosting, really is a testament to the organic sense of excitement that is happening over her campaign. When do I think it'll be time to finally ignore Trump and stop humoring him on what he says? So I actually think that, and this is what I was alluding to before, I don't think the time right now is to ignore Trump. I think it is to broadcast his words, to put them on full display. When Donald Trump talks right now, he does not help himself. We need to show Americans how much of a lunatic the guy actually is. That when you have somebody like Kamala Harris who gets up there and says, I'm a prosecutor, I've prosecuted scumbags like Donald Trump my whole life. Donald Trump is a 34-time convicted felon who most recently was found liable for sexual assault and defamation and business fraud. That is an argument that she should be making, and that is compelling to people. When she says, I've crisscrossed the country for the last year advocating for abortion rights, Donald Trump is bragging about the fact that he has stripped them away. That is a compelling argument that people need to see. The flip side of that is Donald Trump standing on that stage going off about an imaginary cannibal. Like, people need to see that so that they get a very clear split screen of what the choices are in this election. So the time now is not to be ignoring Trump. The point right now is to be broadcasting everything he says, to bang people over the head with the fact that the choice here is a very capable, very adept, very strong prosecutor who is going to protect reproductive rights, who's going to make sure that kids are safer in schools, who's going to protect our access to healthcare and work to make it more affordable, who's going to protect the climate, and who's going to codify abortion rights into federal law. And the other guy is a megalomaniacal narcissist whose only focus is enacting revenge on his opponents and also stripping abortion rights even further. We need to put that split screen on full display. Okay, Pete is an excellent messenger, but Shapiro could bring a swing state with him. Can you briefly analyze the pros and cons between the two choices given this issue? Okay, so here are the pros and cons of Shapiro. The pros are he is very articulate, very compelling speaker. He's young. He's extremely popular. I think his popularity rating, his approval rating in Pennsylvania is plus 31. If we win Pennsylvania, which is the biggest pro here, if we win Pennsylvania by virtue of a bump that Pennsylvania's own very popular governor could bring, then it makes Donald Trump's route to the White House exceedingly difficult. With Pennsylvania, Democrats have to win either some combination of Wisconsin and Michigan, or Nevada, or Arizona, or Georgia. If you win any two of those, we're pretty much good to go. So there are major electoral benefits that are conferred by someone like Josh Shapiro. The disadvantages is that he is perceived by the left, by the very progressive wing of the Democratic Party, as too close to Israel. And so that could hold some baggage at a time when one of the benefits for Kamala Harris is that she was able to shed some of the baggage on Israel-Gaza that Biden held. Again, this isn't me like offering up my opinion on whether I think he is or he isn't. I'm just giving you as objective an analysis as I can about the pros and cons of Shapiro. Then we go to Pete. The pro of Pete is that he is probably the most capable, articulate killer of a politician I have ever seen in my life. He is able to completely dismantle any human being on any network, anywhere, better than anybody else, and that is universally recognized. I think regardless of your politics, you have to know that Pete is just an assassin when it comes to his rhetorical prowess. The flip side of that is he doesn't come from a specific state that would confer some electoral advantage, so he doesn't have the same benefit that Josh Shapiro has, and also the fact that, Pete's gay, and so would that have some type of negative impact on him? And I spoke about this earlier in the live stream, but my thought on this, and I don't know if the rest of America believes me, but my thought is, you don't know that America is ready to vote for a certain type of candidate until you give them the opportunity to vote for a certain type of candidate. We didn't know we were ready to elect a black man until we elected a black man. We didn't know that we were ready to nominate a black woman until we nominated a black woman. And so the same could be true of Pete. And if anybody in the world, regardless of their sexual orientation, was ready to be elevated to the vice presidency, it's Pete. I think we can all recognize that. So that is my, as objective as I can get, my pros and cons of both Pete Buttigieg and Josh Shapiro. Do I have a one sheet I can download to explain and define Kamala Harris and Biden's accomplishments I want to articulate to my family who don't understand? That's a good idea. I'm going to put together a meme, and I'll share it on Facebook, I'll share it on YouTube, and that will very clearly give some accomplishments. But for those who've watched my videos, you've heard me, I guarantee you've heard me say this list, and I'll say it again right now. The accomplishments are the American Rescue Plan, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Law, the Gun Safety Law, the CHIPS Act, the PACT Act, the Violence Against Women Act, codifying marriage equality into federal law, adding 16 million jobs, the longest stretch of around 4% unemployment in half a century. Inflation is down. Wages are now exceeding inflation. The stock market is at a record high, and we have the best economic recovery in the entire world. So that is the list of accomplishments. I'll put them down into some type of shareable format. But that is a very good idea. And let's go one more question here. We'll do one last question. Okay, I'm getting a lot here, so let's see. I'm going to pick one. Will I ever wear a tan suit for live feeds? I don't even own a tan suit. Although I should get one as an homage to Barack Obama. How significant do I think Taylor Swift's endorsement would be? I think it would be cataclysmic. I think it would be monumental. You have somebody like that. Look, I can say my piece to my audiences on a daily basis. The fact is that if you're watching this right now, you're probably super focused and informed on what's happening in politics. Someone like Taylor Swift is talking to audiences who may have no political affiliation, who may not pay attention to politics at all, but for what Taylor Swift may tell them. So, and she's a massive star. I mean, the biggest star in the entire country. So I think if she were to come out, and I hope this is what she'll do, but if she's to come out and advocate for registering to vote, and even more importantly, voting for Kamala Harris and Democrats down the ballot, I think that the impacts, especially as they relate to 18 to 24-year-olds, we will see, mark my words, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of new registrations, largely between the ages of 18 and 34, and those people will be almost exclusively Democratic voters. And so I think the upside there is huge, and the consequences would be just, massive for the Democratic Party. So we will call it there. For those watching, again, to support this live stream, to support this channel, I'm only about 10,000 away from 3 million subscribers. So if you're not yet subscribed and you want to support my work, support this live stream, and just overall help me reach, meaningless milestones at the end of the day, but fun ones nonetheless, please make sure to subscribe. Again, it doesn't cost you anything. And also, if you want to support my work beyond that, zero pressure to do so, but I have a book coming out called Shameless. You can check it out on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Bookshop.org is a great option if you're looking to support independent booksellers. Or just go to any bookseller and type in Shameless by Brian Tyler Cohen. Comes out in a few days, but you can already order it on pre-order right now, and that's another great way to support what I do. So for those watching right now, have a great weekend. Thank you for sticking with me on this live stream here, And we'll call it for today. Thanks, everybody. By the way, the screen here is going to say be right back, but that's it for this live stream. I'm just working on getting my end screen that says thanks for watching. But thanks for watching.